And we're live. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Whatever Show. I am Lawrence Winterman.
And I am Dana Dubois. That's my best friend.
That's my best friend.
Happy MLK Day, Lawrence.
Yes. Happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Um, it's an intense one.
I,
I've been thinking a lot about Dr. King's legacy and how we are not manifesting it in this current moment. And it's heartbreaking.
it is, as I was gathering my thoughts this morning, trying to think of, how do we want to open this show today? It's a solemn day as a holiday. It is a scary day for where we are in the world.
Yeah.
And I don't want to disrespect Dr. King's memories by being like, oh my God, it's in the news cycle today? But also, oh my God, have you seen what's in the news cycle today?
Uh,
Um,
I, you know,
I,
I feel like that's almost a trick question these days because there are
right?
always so many things every day that there's
Yeah,
no way of knowing if the person asking it is thinking of the
the
same
same one.
atrocity that you are thinking of.
I know. Well, the big one that came to mind for me, because it's new this morning, as of at least for me, is that our president wrote a letter to Norway, someone in Norway, and explicitly said, well, I'm invading Greenland because you won't give me the Peace Prize, right? Kind of
Yeah.
petulantly stomping his foot like a little toddler. And what I'd like to say to him is Martin Luther King won the Nobel Peace Prize.
Right.
Let's celebrate him today
Yeah.
and think about maybe why he won the Peace Prize and you haven't, and that maybe threatening violence against the sister country
Sovereign
to the
nations.
to sovereign nations and to sort of
Maybe that's why you didn't win.
right. I mean, I watch Mrs. Frazzled. I don't know that you do, Lawrence, but
No,
she's
I honestly, I knew that you were going that direction. I could
right.
tell that you
And
were going to be
her
like, it's like talking to a kindergartner.
It is, and I hope she does a video about this today. I haven't actually seen her creating those. I haven't seen her videos in my content. I wonder if Meta is suppressing her because I usually see her stuff on Instagram, and she does these hilarious videos where she talks to world leaders in her kindergarten teacher voice because she's an educator, and she'll be like, "No, no, no, catch a bubble." Like the you can't threaten to invade just because it made you sad that you didn't get the peace. Do you know what peace prize means? Let's talk about what peace means, Donnie.
Yeah.
That would be I could almost hear the video coming to life. And um I don't think that there will be an iota of a moment of a thought or a feeling in that man's shriveled up, atrophying Alzheimer addled brain about MLK and his legacy and why he got a Peace Prize and Donald Trump did not. But I'd like to think we can all put that energy in the world today
Yeah.
of being
Yeah. It
grateful.
it is a really interesting contrast or split screen or whatever you want to say, thinking about, where we are in the current moment in the world, our president and the precariousness of peace around the world, the things that are happening in Minneapolis and in our cities and ICE. And it
Mhm.
is such a contrast to the dream that Dr. King articulated. And I can only imagine, I, I don't know, how unbelievably disappointed he would be with us.
Yeah,
It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to think about.
it is. And I mean, I'm the last person who could speak on behalf of Dr. King. That said, I would think that part of through his disappointment, there would still be hope.
I agree.
That's
I was just
all.
talking about that
Oh, were
with our
you?
guest, who we should bring on to the show. We're really excited to have her here with us today.
Yeah.
Dr. Mary M. Marshall is joining us, and we're really honored to have you here, Dr. Marshall. Welcome.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome. It's so great to meet you and see you. I feel as though I know you already. I've missed a
Oh,
lot of your shows, but
Yeah.
I've watched a lot as well. And I did my best to prepare me, not the content, but me. Um, I'll explain that as we go along.
Yeah. Well,
yes.
In a private message, I kind of explained it,
mhm.
but I will talk a little bit about it. But I'm happy to be here. Happy MLK Day. I want you to know from the start, this is probably the second, if not the very first time that I've actually been in communication with anyone on MLK Day outside of very close friends or family. I
Wow.
have tended in the past to, I guess you could call it, meditate about the day. And at the same time, think about his birth, but try not to think about how he died.
Right.
Very hard thing to do.
Right. Yeah.
100%. Would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
No, I wouldn't. No,
I
I
love the
kind
honesty. Well,
I kind of feel like I've stepped into. I was a teacher. I'm gonna forgive me, audience, and Dana and Lawrence, if I'm circular, but I was a teacher, and I typically would walk into my class and have a seat and wait until everyone was there and wait like they were waiting for the teacher to come in because I knew once I stood up and said that, good morning, I'm Dr. Mary Marshall. I'm your professor for this semester of African American history and or humanities and or English, all three of which I taught, that 95% of the class would start to fidget in their seats. I was teaching at a predominantly white university,
mm,
very few black, Hispanic, or Asian students. And the white students were accustomed. I was the only African American faculty person in the humanities. So I would introduce myself. My name is Dr. Mariam Marshall. I am at the moment a retired educator, an archivist, a historian. I focus on family history mostly, but family history in the context of the time in which my ancestors lived. So, my Substack, I write about people who lived from the 1850s through today, insofar as they are an ancestor. I have not written about any live members of my family because I think that would be invading their privacy.
mm,
And I don't want to be chased out of town. So I think it's best I stick with those who speak to me in spirit. But I am blessed to have inherited a fairly large um, archive of pictures, letters, postcards, and other memorabilia. I have letters that were written by family members as early as 1895.
wow.
From
Oh my.
1895 through about the 1970s, the most of them falling in the 1895 to about 1945 time period. Then I have postcards that range between about 1905 through the 1960s, and pictures from, I'd say, the 1850s all the way, even including now, because I take a lot of pictures. The All of these items were items that my great grandmother started to collect, and they were just passed down over time. And I seemed to not, I wasn't the only one in the family interested, but the only one who actively put my feet in my hands in,
Mhm.
along with my mother. And when we closed our home in Georgia, I brought as much as I could here to New York, where I am now. And later, I knew that I couldn't keep them here because I don't have the space or the environment. I traveled to several different universities to see what the possibility was of placing them there. Of course, I'm right here in New York, where there's the Schomburg Center for um, Black Culture and History. However, I wanted them to be at a place, on the one hand, where it was more centrally located on the one hand, and more people might have access, and on the other hand, I didn't necessarily want them to be at a place that was so famous, so well known, that my
Mhm.
little collection might never be accessed.
Right.
So ultimately, I chose to place them at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
from Georgia, and my first choice would have been Payne College, which is a college in my hometown, but they just didn't have the facility to archive in the way that I knew that they needed to be archived. And
That
at the moment, as a retired person, I get to spend my time doing what I want to do. So I write a lot, I read a lot, but I don't publish everything that I write. I'm not just interested in history, I'm very interested in photography, especially photographs, because I inherited so many. I wanted to know a lot more about them. I'm interested in art, though I can barely draw a stick figure. But you do what you can when you can. I just wouldn't offer my art
Absolutely.
for sale, at least not with my name on it. Other
Completely
than that,
fair.
I have done a lot of volunteer work over the last 20 years, and I still do a little volunteer work. I last taught in 1990, well, actually 1995, 96. But fast forward, I did do some volunteer work at my church where I taught an SAT class. So I think I'll end that, my introduction of me. Last thing I will say is that I have 4 degrees. I have a bachelor's in
Wow.
speech pathology, audiology. I
Me
carry
too.
carried a double major. I When I was at Howard University, I wanted to just have one major. I didn't want to do all that extra work. But the speech pathology department had not been approved by the department, the trustees at the time, so I was forced to carry both a speech major and English. My class, I was one of the first students to graduate from what is now Howard School of Communications. It grew out of those of us who were
Mm.
speech pathology majors. So I took some courses primarily at Howard, but we had teachers who came to us from Gallaudet. And
Oh,
then
yes.
I worked for a while with the adult education department at the New York City Board of Education, went back to school and got a master's degree in reading development. Then I went into administration, went back to school, and earned a PhD in 19th century studies with my focus on women, but specifically Lucy Craft Laney, who was an educator born in Macon, Georgia, but established a school in my hometown, and 5 generations of women, or I should say not just women because it was a co-ed school, but 5 generations of people in my family attended this school. But it was private, then it became public. When Lucy Laney died in 1933, by 1949, the school became a public school named for her. My siblings and I moved to New York, so I graduated from school here in New York. And so that my dissertation focuses on Springfield Baptist Church, which is a church I grew up in, and Lucy Craft Laney more specifically, but more generally, 19th century and women in general.
Dr. Marshall, what
That
an
was the best
incredible story you have.
Yeah.
And you
Best
know,
intro ever.
it's making me, Dana, you remember Dr. Heiler. So Dr. Marshall, when you were talking about being one of the few Black teachers in a predominantly white school, it made me think of a Black teacher that Dana and I had when we were growing up in middle
Sixth
school
grade.
In sixth grade, a very white community that, Dr. Heiler was one of 2 or 3 maybe Black educators at the school. And it wasn't until in my 20s or maybe my 30s that I thought back on just the personal bravery it must have required for her to be in that situation, in a way. I think I'm embarrassed to say, maybe many of the kids there, myself included, Dr. Heiler might have been the first Black person I'd ever met in person, and had a chance to, get to know. And I'm wondering how that experience was for you. Was it made me sad to think about it later, because I imagined that she felt very lonely in that place.
Well, I've thought about that a lot over the years. By the time I became a professor at a predominantly white school, prior to teaching, I started out my career teaching at City College, the City University of New York, which is very diverse. Mm-hmm. So I did not feel lonely at all. In fact, I started teaching there the first year that open enrollment was made available to everyone. New York City, the CUNY system had always been free and available to everyone, but not available to everyone. And teaching at City College, the state of New York, like states across the country, had created special programs, whether they called them SEEK or higher education opportunity programs, whatever the name, for minority and disadvantaged communities. So I started teaching there, and I had a mix of students. However, it was when I went to Rensselaer Polytechnic as an administrator of the Minority Student Affairs program, and then teaching at New Jersey Institute of Technology, that I was the only, at Rensselaer, I was the only Black female in the department and in a professional position on the campus, with the exception of the School of Architecture. I didn't really, what I did when I was at Rensselaer, I would drive home to New York about once a month so that I could see people who looked like me.
Right.
Of course, I had maybe about 300 to 400 students who saw me as not just the administrator, but their mother, their aunt, their sister. And I listened to a variety of stories, hurts, insults, instances where students were being antagonized because of the color of their skin. And So I would come home to New York to my family, to friends, to ground myself. However, things became different when I worked at NJIT. I was just across the river, so I could come home a lot more often. But by that time, I was older, more confident about what I was doing. And I also thought, I don't have time to deal with the racism that I was experiencing
Mm.
because I was simultaneously in graduate school working on my doctorate, and I started out teaching part time. Then the teaching part time became full time once I finished my coursework. There were many moments when I would have liked another African American, female or male for that matter,
Hmm.
to chat with in a real honest kind of way. There were other Black administrators there, but because my schedule was so busy between me being in school, writing my own papers, then grading the papers of my students. Ultimately, I was teaching 4 classes, a minimum of between 35 to 40 students per class, 3 times a week. So I really just didn't think I had time to think about whether they liked me or not. And I always
Mhm.
addressed that within the first week of class because once I stood up and students realized, oh, where is Dr. Simpson or Dr. Williams or whomever that class was initially listed as?
Hmm.
And I would simply say, this is Humanities 101, which was at 8 o'clock in the morning. You
Oof.
chose to take the class. I am the teacher. You have my permission now to get up and leave if you choose not to
Wow.
stay. I'm not going to be insulted by it, but you do understand that registration closes in 2 days. All classes are filled. You chose the 8 o'clock class. Most of you are first semester seniors. You've been advised by your engineering and architecture professors to put humanities and English off until your senior year. And now you're trying to cram in this course plus your major and graduate while not letting your parents know there's a possibility that you may walk and get a paper in May, but it won't be your diploma because you haven't finished your core courses. Now,
Oh,
having said that,
ouch.
you are free to go and try and change the class, but understand you only have one chance because if you can't get into another class, your seat may be gone here. Thank you. This is the first class. I'm only holding it for information. You have your syllabus. I'll see you the next class.
Wow.
Did anybody ever leave after you gave that speech?
Yes.
Wow.
Really? Because I'm
Some
like,
students,
I
some
could
students
feel the,
left,
yeah.
and then had to come back asking if they could be readmitted. And I would say, I'm sorry. It's not that I don't want you in, but while you were trying to get out of my class, someone else who needed this class swallowed whatever feelings they had about me being the teacher and enrolled. So there's just simply no space. I even at one point had a student to go to the chairman of the department, and I'm kind of skipping ahead here, but it's
Okay.
relevant. Complained that I used the book, the autobiography of Frederick Douglass, as one of my humanities texts. And the student complained to the department that I was teaching Black history. And my argument to the chairman, who wanted me to remove the book, was that if I remove the autobiography of Frederick Douglass, then you have to also remove Tom Sawyer, because some teachers were using Tom Sawyer as their selection of 3 or 4 books that, we typically would have students use.
Hmm.
The autobiography of Frederick Douglass is American history.
Right.
Yes,
Oh,
he was
absolutely.
an African American person, but his story is as relevant to humanities as anyone else's story. So that was one of the major moments that sticks out for me. The student chose to leave, and that was fine, except at the end of the semester, I didn't know what happened to her. She just stopped coming. At the end of the, I get her name on my grade sheet. And so I just assumed that the registrar forgot to take it off. But no, the department had placed her in another teacher's class.
Oh, Lord.
And I didn't know about it, didn't care. She wasn't there, and so I went on with my class. However, the situation came to a head because at the end of the semester, that professor handed me the student's grade to add to my grade report. And I'm like, no,
Oh,
that's
no.
not happening. You removed the student because she did not want me as a professor. She was not in my class. And as far as I'm concerned,
She got an F.
that's right, she remained on my roll, and I gave her the F that she deserved. It's up to you to straighten it out, but she will not get a grade from me.
Right.
I don't know how they resolved it. I didn't care, but I made sure I kept all my papers to make sure that they didn't change the grade and submit it under my name.
Yeah.
I was called into the chairman's office. I was called into the dean's office. And I'm like, no.
Get after it. That's
I love that, Dr. Marshall. You were just being honest. Based on what I've seen, which is absolutely nothing from this person,
Yeah.
she got an F.
Exactly. I mean, you didn't come to class.
Right.
You didn't even come to me and say, listen, I don't want to be in your class. I'm dropping the class. The department, she went, and it wasn't even a chairman who made the decision to keep her on my roll. Whatever your position is in life, I can't quote Dr. King exactly, but even if you're a street sweeper, if you're a garbage collector, whatever you are doing honestly to earn your living, have pride in that.
Right. Do it with dignity.
Secretaries are really the ones who run institutions, corporations. You want to get something done, make sure you make friends with the secretary.
Right.
So the secretary took it upon herself to move this student and make this arrangement. So I'm like, let the secretary give her the grade, but it will not be me. And I guarantee you it will not be accepted by the registrar because the secretary is not the professor. But it was quite the incident because I would not play games with them.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So in the end, did your grade stick? Please say yes.
Well, my grade stuck on my red roster. What they simply did was they finally removed her from my roster and added her to the other teacher's roster. But that was so unfair to all the other students who had wanted to be in whatever class. Once late registration is over, it's over. It's not over 4 months later. But this was a predominantly white institution, and they did what they wanted to do.
Right. They let racism fly because, for them it was easier to be racist than to,
Yes, and it was easy
Dr. Marshall,
for them to treat me the way that they wanted to do. I fought in the ways that I could fight. And I had an accident, a head on. I was in a head on collision in 1995.
Hmm.
I was to be the featured speaker for a Paul Robeson dinner and celebration. And when I arrived on campus, unfortunately, it was a Friday evening, and students of the school thought the campus was closed. Bottom line is, I was hit head on and ended up with a brain injury that brought my career to a screeching halt. Now, while it brought my teaching career to a screeching halt, I still had to spend an additional 2 years finishing my degree. I had finished everything and was preparing for comps when the accident happened, but I needed time to recover. And it took a year for the doctors to determine that I had a brain injury. And at the time, I lived in New Jersey, so I was traveling to New York for treatment because the only hospital on the entire East Coast that could treat my particular condition was here in New York City. So I mentioned to you, and I think I mentioned it to you, Dana, I'm not sure, that I have difficulty with my voice and with my eyes. So I have a condition called dystonia, where every 3 months I get injections into my vocal cord so that you and I and Lawrence can have this conversation.
Hmm.
And also around the muscles of my eyes, because without those injections, my eyelids blink almost continuously once I start to talk. This is a condition I've lived with for 30 years. And it's really one thing for me to tell myself, every 12 weeks you're getting injections. But this year, for the first time, I thought, wow, 30 years, every 12 weeks, my poor vocal cords. However, without the injections, I sound like someone who is a severe stutterer and who also has laryngitis. It's very difficult to speak. So I'm grateful that science has a treatment. This voice that you hear today I'm at my 6th or 7th week of the cycle, and it will remain strong for another 2, maybe 3 weeks. Around the 10th week, it starts to get very soft. And then, unless you're right with me, you might not be able to hear me, and it becomes very difficult to communicate on the phone. But I like to talk, so I talk anyway. I like to share information.
And we love hearing you talk. Dr. Marshall, you mentioned earlier that your first degree was in speech pathology, also my first degree. And your other degree was English, and that was Lawrence's first degree. So you're like a hybrid of our college educations, only you did both. It sounds like you're describing spasmodic dysphonia.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
See, that speech degree helped, right?
Right. Those are Botox injections, if memory.
Yes.
It was the first time I'd ever heard of Botox back in the day when I was in grad school. I have watched those injections. They are intense. I'm glad they're providing you with such relief. I'm sorry you have to do that, but I am glad you have the treatment so that your voice can be heard, literally.
I was, when they told me what I had,
Mhm.
and that I would have to get an injection, I was, terrified. But I was like, okay, let's go. But when they said they were going to inject into my vocal cords, I'm trying to imagine how
Right.
that is. And then once it was explained, I said, okay, so you're going to put me to sleep, right?
Nope.
No,
Oh no.
no, it's called, our procedure now. When I'm at the doctor, I ask him, he'll ask me, are you ready? Most of the time, I start laughing and then I'm like, okay, hold up. When I stick my thumb up, I'm ready because
Yeah.
you cannot move.
Right.
Once that needle goes through your throat, he's got to
Oof.
get the right point on the vocal cord. And it's really very fast. But when you're told the very first time what has to happen, I'm trying to imagine you want to stick a needle into my vocal cords and you expect me to just
Be
lay
perfectly
here
still.
Right.
Yeah.
and be still.
And they're
You
sticking
want
it
me you
through your
want me
throat
to
from the outside?
Yeah.
yes, you
Oh,
want me to breathe. And once you have the needle into my vocal cords, you have the audacity to say, Miss Marshall, would you say E? Would you say ah? And I'm like, wait a minute. And of course, I can't really say, wait a minute, but in my
right.
head, I'm saying, you want me to talk while there's
Yeah.
a needle in my throat? But yes, that's the procedure. And it probably went as quickly in 1995, well, actually 1996. It probably went as quickly then as it goes now. But in 1996, because it took them a year to really understand what the problem was,
Mhm.
it's still, I mean, if I'm really honest with myself, it's trauma every 3 months.
Oh,
But
sure.
I
Yeah.
just can't think about the trauma. I think about the fact that, oh, I can talk now. My friends,
Yes.
when I call them up, they say, oh, you got your injection.
Right. Oh,
You
you got
got
your
your
voice back.
injections because
Yeah.
it's like
I
nonstop. You know, I
Yeah.
Can't
worked
they
in,
give you medication of some kind, not to knock you out, but to calm your nerves? I
well,
know women tend to not get pain meds or just the
yes, they will prescribe either clonazepam or there's another one, but I've over the years I have
yeah.
practiced deep meditation. So a
Yeah.
couple of days prior to injections, I typically don't spend a lot of time talking to people. I try not to do heavy work or any work really. I just try to relax and get myself into a frame of mind where, okay, I know by now this is really going to be over in under 2 minutes. In
Mhm.
fact, it's about
Mhm.
a minute and a half. I actually have video of them injecting me because it's one thing for me to receive the injection, but I didn't know how it looked.
Right.
So I got one of the residents to to videotape me, and I didn't like what I saw. It's
Mm.
not that I didn't like it. It's just, as I say, it's sort of like you're trying to teach a child not to touch the hot stove, and no matter how many times you say don't, some kids aren't going to be satisfied until they at least sense the heat. Maybe not touch it, but sense it. And at that point, you don't have to keep telling them don't go near the stove because they
Yeah.
get it. Once I actually got the injection and understood how quickly it was in and out, my nerves are still there, but it's just a matter of life. It's my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know when to schedule. Like in scheduling this for today, I had to first look at the calendar and see how many days out from injections, because
Mhm.
once the
Oh,
injection is given, there's a 5 to 7 day when my voice is very soft, are very clear, fluid, but it's just very low.
Right.
So I
Dr.
chose
Marshall,
the
I
day.
have to confess, I'm one of those obstinate children who actually had to touch
Had
the
to
hot burner to learn.
I have no trouble believing that,
I'm sure
Lawrence.
I might have touched, if not the hot burner, God knows we had fireplaces in our home in Georgia, and I might have gotten a little bit too close.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
you know,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would love to read a comment to you from the chat, Dr. Marshall. I also want to tell you that Lawrence and I have known each other since we were 9 years old, and I can attest he was that kind of kid that totally checks. But we
I'd
are
like to say
life.
it's because I'm naturally a scientist and I needed to conduct my own research, but it might be
ah,
because I'm
see,
stubborn.
Yes. Nikki in the chat is said, Dr. Marshall with a heart. I too have dystonia from a TBI, traumatic brain injury. I have great admiration. And then goes on to say that her accident took place in 2001 and other parts of her body suffered injuries too, and that she's never fully recovered to her former self. Um, but that she's still breathing, and that you are absolutely phenomenal. So I wanted
oh,
to
thank you,
pass that message along that you are
thank you.
inspiring others. And on that same note, I wanted to talk about one of your stories, if that's okay. May I shift
Sure.
the topic? When we were writing back and forth about this show, you had sent me a link to a story. I'm going to put it in the chat right now so others can see it because it's a slightly older story and it's called Sunday Message. And the subtitle is The Spirit of Mrs. Margie A. Bowler.
Oh,
Uh,
yes, yes,
yeah,
Mrs. Bowler.
there was a part of this I would love to read out loud. I read it when you sent it to me last week, and I did what I often do now, which is I put the audio on as I was getting ready this morning, so it was really fresh in my brain. And I want to hear your views on this story. But first, I wanted to read these words because I think they're so beautiful, and it's you quoting someone who touched you, which was meditation from Katz Lally. I hope I'm saying her name right. And it's talking about the power of writing, which is why this one really jumped out this morning. So I charge you today, my fellow writers, my fellow prophets, keep writing, keep proclaiming, keep believing that your words, your holy utterances are the sound of Jericho's end. For we are not simply speaking into the void, we are speaking life into the dry bones of this world. We are declaring to the powers that be, you may stand for now, but your days are numbered. With each word, with each sentence, we are pulling down strongholds, breaking chains, and writing the world into liberation. And I can't tell you how much I needed to hear those words today of all days under this current regime and on MLK's birthday. So thank you for putting those in front of me today. I would love to hear more about why you shared this story with me as one that you thought would be a great one to bring forward. I have thoughts, but I would like to hear yours.
Well, what happened was I was reading. I have a 6 pack, if that's the right way to describe it, cassette collection of Martin Luther King's speeches.
Hmm.
And I also am originally from Augusta, Georgia. And it occurred to me, I wonder if he ever spoke there. I was born in Georgia, but my parents lived in New York. So my siblings and I were back and forth between Augusta and New York. We lived with our grandparents. And we went to Springfield Baptist Church. Mrs. Bowler and her family were members of the church. Her daughter, Frederica, was one of many people who conducted the children's choir and the young people's choir. The Bowlers lived about 5 blocks from where I lived. My grandmother and Mrs. Bowler were friends. So as I'm researching Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I discover that his parents were friends with the Bowlers. in the 1950s and were visiting their home. And I immediately, all these years later, felt really jealous. Like, why didn't Mrs. Bowler invite me over? Because I would have loved to even, of course, he was a child at that point, but fast forward, one of her sons is still alive, and he probably won't remember me because he's much older than I am even now. Nevertheless, when I learned that Martin Luther King had spent time at the Bowler House, where I spent time, where we had missionary meetings, where we had choir practice, I kept thinking, wow, I was passing him by. We were just passing one another. The one and only time that I met Dr. King was when I was a sophomore at Howard University. But now I know, yes, I didn't meet him until that moment in 1966, but he had kind of been in and out of my life vicariously through the Bowlers. That particular article that I wrote was actually when I read Jackie Verbal has two accounts on Substack, one called Black Stack, and one I think is called Changing Chronicle or Chronicles of Change. And several people had written different essays. And as I read those essays, those quotes stuck out to me and reminded me of Mrs. Bowler when I first wrote the article. And once I was doing the research on King and whether or not he spoke in my hometown, I was furious that we moved from Augusta in 1961. He visited and spoke at Tabernacle Baptist Church in 1962. Tabernacle Baptist Church is around the corner from the Bowler House, and both are 5 blocks from where I lived, where I grew up. So to think that all of this great activity, this wonderful person who went on to become a hero to me and many other people, he is like a poet. I mean, listening to how he phrases what he wants to say, it's just amazing. But Mrs. Bowler and her husband were absolutely wonderful people. And I could see how they influenced Martin Luther King because I know how they influenced me. And even now, in many communities, not just the Black community, the elders are your mother, whether or not that elder is necessarily a blood relative or not. So Mrs. Bowler was like another mother to me. I knew that if I stepped out of line in church, or if she caught me playing she lived across the street from the local high school. I didn't attend, but my sister did. And the bottom line is, if Mrs. Bowler or any of the adults in the community saw me doing something they thought I shouldn't be doing, or saying something that was inappropriate, I knew that if they knew my grandmother and they had a phone, or even if they lived close enough and they could get to my home before I could get home to give my version of what happened to my grandmother, there was going to be hell to pay in one way or another. And since this is Martin Luther King Day, and I read about how he stayed at the Bowler home, I didn't know that when I wrote the article, because if I had known that then, it just didn't occur to me to see what famous people might have stayed there. But that's the connection. The fact that I knew the Bowlers, he knew the Bowlers. And I also learned something last night that I had never seen before. I had an aunt whose first name was Albertine. I only know one other Albertine Walker. However, I learned in looking at my cassette tapes that Dr. King's daughter, Reverend Bernice King, is Reverend Bernice Albertine King. So I kind of feel
Oh,
like the universe meant for me to be a part of this Martin Luther King family in some way, even if they didn't know it and I didn't know it.
I love these slice of life stories. They make me feel a little more connected to Dr. King. And I definitely felt that through your writing. It has this delightful way of kind of wandering through these details of your day-to-day life or the lives of the people from the past that you're bringing forward. And I'm feeling that very much listening to you talk. So thank you for sharing your stories like this. I also want to add that I found Blackstack. You recommended them, and I did just subscribe. And it popped up that I have a few free subscriptions to pass along. So if anyone would like a subscription to Blackstack, direct message me, and I will share with you. So I love when creators do that. That if you get a paid subscription, they give you more to kind of help spread the word. So I am happy to do that if anyone would like a subscription. Slide into my DMs. I just wanted to say slide into my DMs because
Right.
that sounds naughty.
Dr. Marshall, you were as you were introducing yourself to us, you were talking about your collection of photos and your kind of family memorabilia and your donation to Emory University. And I was wondering if you could spend a couple minutes telling us about that. There's such a strong. I love the way you talk about ancestors and your connection to the past, and I'd love to hear more about that collection.
Sure. Just give me 1 second.
Sure.
Uh-oh, I think you might. Oh, wait, no, you're just getting up there. Sorry, I'm looking at this is the hazard, Lawrence, of I was looking at the chat, so it was a few seconds delayed. Now I'm
Right.
back in StreamYard.
Oh my
Okay,
gosh.
Oh,
I have to slide it. So this is my grand aunt, Mary Francille, born in 1905.
what a beautiful child. Oh my
And
Hmm.
God.
right. And then this is my grandmother. Now, my
Wow.
grandmother was born in 1900. This portrait is um is one of the pictures that's at Emory. This is a copy. The original is at Emory. My great grandparents had 8 children, only 4 of whom survived past 1915.
Mhm.
My grand aunt Mary Frances and Mary Francille, and my grandmother being 2 of them. And they were the 2 people who raised me. I Something told me, I'll pull it up while we're talking, but I was born in our home in Georgia. And this is a home that my great grandfather and other members of the Augusta Union Number 2 built. I was born in a 2-story, 8-bedroom home with living room, parlor, dining room, um, bedrooms downstairs, upstairs, upstairs and downstairs, front porch. And our home was one of 3 large 2-story homes like that on the street that I lived on. 2 of those homes, the one I was born in and the one next door, belonged to our family.
Hmm.
And, when you're a kid, you're not necessarily thinking about how big your house is, how many rooms there are. You're more concerned about your food, and you're really not concerned about that because somebody is going to feed you.
Right.
So you're into whatever you're into. I was into books and reading, but my great grandparents were I learned over the course of my life, I have concluded that my great grandparents would have been considered middle class, maybe moving upper class in the Black community.
Hmm.
By the home that I was born in, my great grandfather purchased it and completed paying for it by 1903. By 1913, they owned 4 houses, 3 additional homes, which they used as income.
Mm.
And my great grandfather suddenly died in 1916, leaving his wife with 3 daughters. Well, actually, 5 daughters and 4, but pregnant with one.
Wow.
And the last one was born 6 weeks after his death.
Mm.
Oof.
That's a lot of property and income and wealth for a Black family in the early 1900s.
Sure.
And I have the receipts for where he paid the mortgage. I have the deeds to all of those properties. And to grow up and later learned how significant that was to our community. So it's photos like the one that I showed you, large, 16 by 20, but I also had 10 types. And that spurred my deep dive into photography. And that led me to, I actually have a picture of Martin Luther King when he spoke at Riverside Church in 1967. I don't live that far from Riverside Church. And once my last great aunt passed, grand aunt passed, my mom and I went to clean out the house, and I brought as many of the papers and other documents as I could to New York. You can access them at Emory University, but I also, in that collection is a Black newspaper called The Echo. You can put my name in the search, Mary Marshall plus Emory University, The Echo, and you'll be able to read some issues of The Echo online. The
Wow.
Echo was a weekly Black newspaper published in Augusta, Georgia. And I found an announcement of the marriage of one of my grand aunts in the newspaper. I
Oh,
found an ad, not an ad, but an announcement of the birth of their first child in the same Black newspaper.
that's
And
lovely.
I've been able to read a lot about people that I grew up not necessarily knowing. I went to the Charles T. Walker Elementary School. Well, Dr. Charles T. Walker he's called the Spurgeon of Georgia. He was an educator, but he traveled all over the country, all over the Middle East, and a school was named for him. When he died, I forget the year, but according to the newspaper, over 10,000 people attended his funeral. So it's amazing to me that I actually got my first degree in speech pathology, because as I look back at my ancestors and at the people that they were exposed to, I should have been a historian from day one.
Hmm.
But
Right.
I was the family historian. But for
Yeah.
me, the word historian was not attached to it. I was just the one that, the saying is, you may be present and listen, but do not speak. So when adults were talking, I could sit and they knew I was listening. But if I dared get into that conversation, I did not want to know the consequences. So
Hmm.
I heard a lot, and it was reaffirming for me when I was putting the pictures together to access my own memory and the stories that I heard my grandmother and grandaunts tell. Well, I didn't have to rely solely on my memory because I have these letters. My grandmother wrote a letter in 1912 to her mother. She, in 1912, was in Ports, Portsmouth, I think it's Portwick, Massachusetts, as a live-in maid. I was furious when I wrote that. I'm like, how could her mother let her go that far away at 12 years old? But she was not there by herself. Her aunt was working. So for the summer, my grandmother was a live-in maid, but she experienced an eclipse. She writes a letter to her mother saying that if Augusta weren't so far away, she would walk home. She describes how the ocean is orange looking, and it's clear that she's amazed by what she sees, but that she's also frightened. But the very fact that she's writing this and describing it,
Hmm.
it just made me love her even more. So I get my desire and my interest for history and writing from all of the members of my family, because my great grandma, I have letters my great grandmother wrote, letters my grand aunts wrote, and postcards and letters they received. And the letters they wrote like every week. I have a telegram that my great grandmother sent to my grandmother that today, if she had a phone back then, would have been a text message, because it's very short. It's like, where are you? Are you sick? That's it.
Right.
A telegram was very expensive in 1927.
Yeah.
And her mother just needed to know two things: where are you? And are you sick? Where are you included? Where are you? How come I haven't heard from you?
Yep.
When am I
Right.
going to hear from you?
Right.
And
There's
what's
so much
making you
stated,
exactly?
so much
And
motherly worry in those few words.
exactly, it reminds me of reading your um,
Oh, the college story.
feelings about your oldest daughter going away, and that made me
Yeah.
think about, wow, what did my mom think? She took
Yeah.
me to college,
Hmm.
but what was she feeling? I was so into me,
Of
into
course.
being grown on my own, away at school. Only, as I mentioned, she takes me, she drops me off, and I'm feeling all grown. But we got there when dinner was over.
I
I
love
was
this story.
hungry.
Yeah.
And I had to call my mother. There were no cell phones. So I had to get permission from the dorm director to call my mother, who thankfully had stayed in Washington, D.C. with friends, to say, Mom, I'm hungry. I cannot leave campus without a chaperone. So can you please come back and take me? And she did. I was so happy that she didn't just turn around and head back to New York, because
Right.
I would have had to wait. I guess they would have found something, or, some crackers or something, but I don't think I
Right.
thought to pack crackers. So
Hmm.
Dana, make sure you pack some crackers
Some
wherever.
Oh,
snacks.
I am
Some
the snack. You
snacks.
should see the snacks in my house. Like, I am the snack house. And yes, wherever she goes, I will be sending her care packages, or,
Yes.
subscribe and save shipments from Amazon of food or whatever. Like, the child will never be hungry as long as I have something to say about it.
But
This
and
has
I
been
just
so
wanted
delightful. I do
to
want to jump in
also
and say, oh, sorry, you go first. You go
I just
first.
wanted to answer
Yeah,
one more thing about to Lawrence's question.
yeah.
I still have documents, and items that I'm sorting through to place at Emory, because I became ill in between the time the first shipment was placed there. And I'm only now at the point where I can start to sort and get ready.
And my comment was so related to that, which is that Barbara from the chat went and found the link to your collection and shared it in the chat. So, and I'm going to put it in here one more time, and we'll put it in the recap when we post this, so folks can go to the website and see your collection. Thank you for sharing all of this with us today. The chat is blowing up with all of these comments for you. I'm not sure. It's hard to read the chat and also talk.
So many people are thanking you for being here, Dr. Marshall, and just commenting on how extraordinary you are and what a resource and connection to your history, your family's history, and
nice.
our feelings of history. So thank
As
you.
you know, I was so nervous about this.
Oh my gosh. Nervous to talk to us?
not nervous to talk to you, but nervous to get out whatever I might say. I know we're at the top of the hour, maybe even almost over, but I just want to say that having, as Dana will know, having spasmodic dysphonia means that I'm not always able to be this vocal and this clear.
Mm-hmm.
And when the opportunity occurs, I grab it and just run. So there are no periods, there are no commas, there are no exclamation points. It's just talk, talk, talk. So
well, we are the lucky beneficiaries of your fluency today, because it has been such a delight to listen to you and learn from you. I hope you'll come back in the future and join us again. I feel like there's so much more to talk to you about.
I feel like we just got started.
Right, me too.
I was concerned that I wouldn't, get more than a couple of sentences out. But now that I've had my trial run, I'm ready.
Oh, excellent.
Put her in, coach. She's ready. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Dr. Marshall.
Thank you for having me.
Such an honor. I hope everyone has a wonderful MLK Day. I know a lot of us are off work today, including me. But let this also be a day of contemplating what peace means, finding one's inner peace when the world feels like it's on fire all around us, and putting out a wish for a broader peace in spite of these trying times.
It's very well said, Dana.
Thank you.
And thank you for inviting me. And I loved the conversation that you had at the very beginning about somebody who just thinks they should have a Nobel Peace Prize. Mm-hmm. I think the three of us definitely deserve one, a lot more than that person does.
Absolutely.
Whose name I try my best not to call, but yes, I listened to that report this morning about Norway. This is Martin Luther King Day, and a day to think about peace, both within ourselves and in our communities, and how we interact with others, and to listen to what others have to say. You might find that there's a lot more in common than there is difference. And where there is difference, we can agree to disagree and still respect one another and continue to communicate, not necessarily to change the other person's mind, but sometimes in communicating, minds do change. And the last thing I'll say is that I was very, very happy and blessed that typically at the end of the semester, many of my white male students would write me notes, letting me know that they were resentful of having me as a teacher at the beginning of the semester. But as the semester went on, they were happy to see that I didn't treat them any differently from my other students, and that they had gained tremendous respect for me because I accepted them for who they were and didn't try to, quote, make them Black history people.
Mhm.
So
I-
I
The
felt
living
that,
embodiment of Dr. King's content of your character, right?
yes, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr.
Beautiful.
Thank
Marshall. What
you.
an honor to have you with us. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge.
All
Thank
doing
you.
the hearts.
Yes.
We love
All
you
right.
all. Excuse
Have
me.
a
We love
wonderful
you
day,
all today.
everybody. Thanks
I've
again,
been to
Dr. Marshall.
Portland,
Oh,
and we'll have to talk about that the next time.
okay. Let's do it. I'm in Seattle, but I was just in Portland a few weeks ago. It's a beautiful place, the Northwest. Take
Okay.
care,
Thanks,
Dr.
everybody.
Marshall. Love
Love
you
you.
all.
Okay, happy Martin Luther King Day.
Bye.
Happy Martin
Bye.
Luther King Day.